Hello everyone, welcome back to the Level Up English podcast. If you want to improve and level up your English, this is the place to be and learn English on the go and hopefully having fun as well. So my name is Michael and today we are doing an AMA episode. It's been a long time since I've done one of these, but I'm excited. I really love them. I think it's a great way for me to connect with some of you and answer your questions directly. So AMA means Ask Me Anything. I always reach out to my Instagram audience because that's a good way to ask for these questions. If you want to ask a question for a future AMA episode, then follow me there. My Instagram is English with Michael. And I have a lot of questions today. Some are related to English, some are related to British culture, some might be more personal about me. I don't know. I haven't prepared any answers. I'm going to look at these and reply to them as I talk and see how I do. Let's see if I can come up with some good answers. I've got one here that's in Arabic, which I will not be answering because I cannot read Arabic. So sorry about that one, but English questions are appreciated. So let's see. I'll try to get to as many as I can, but we'll see how much I can do here. I've got a lot of really good questions today, so I'm just going to jump right into it and get to it now. One says, well, they kind of first explain that they are a big Anglophile. Phile means love in Greek. Anglo means like English. So Anglophile is someone who loves English. Anglophile. I just want to know everything about your culture. Well, that's nice. That's cool to hear. That's a really nice thing to be curious about, is culture. Their question was, do British people show off? I don't think so. I think they are cool and they like to remain low-key. So that's interesting. I think I'm going to read out part of the names for this. I don't want to give people's Instagram accounts away, but I can at least say thank you. So this was from Drishti. And I think British people like to show off, right? So it's really easy when it comes to a culture to try to generalize a culture. I do this all the time. Like, I asked someone the other day about Chinese people, and then they answered the question, and I kind of thought, well, I think it's a stupid question because China is such a big country. Like, there's no way I could just say, tell me about Chinese people. It's such a big place that it's just impossible to say that. We can notice some similarities within people in a culture. I don't know. I feel like it depends who you compare it to. Like, if you compare it to a lot of Asian cultures, like I'm thinking ones I'm familiar with, like Thailand, Japan, British people like showing off. In these cultures where I am now, it's not really a good idea to show off. I think people are quite respectful. They don't want to stand out too much. In the UK, I think a lot of people do want to stand out. They want to be unique and special. And that is a kind of a form of showing off, isn't it? But maybe what you're getting at here in your question is a lot of British people can be quite self-deprecating. Self-deprecating means to talk, how can we say, negatively about yourself and not focus on your own accomplishments. I do think there's something in British culture where there's an awkwardness about talking about your accomplishments. I think this is something that Americans could do a lot better than we do. But when we do something successfully, it's really difficult to say, I just got a promotion today, or I just did this big thing today. Like, there's some things that I do that I'm really proud of that I do not tell my friends about, just because it's still a little bit awkward. It's just not quite done. So maybe that's what you're talking about, actually. Something about British culture where succeeding isn't always encouraged for whatever reason, especially compared to that American culture. So you might hear that a lot. Someone might say, oh, Michael, you've got such a great podcast. I'll be like, no, it's not that great. Don't be silly. So that's quite common, I think, in a lot of British people. Yeah. Someone has asked a question about British slang. This is Dancing in the Dark. Is the slang word Cotch commonly used. I heard it on a podcast. I had to look up what this word means because it sounds like a rude word. I was really worried I would be saying a rude word, but apparently it's not. Apparently it means to spend time relaxing. I've never heard this before. I've never heard this. I think, according to Google, it seems to have come from Jamaican English. Perhaps Jamaican English. So I wonder if in like a more Jamaican crowd, there's a lot of Jamaicans in the UK, for example, this might be a more common word, or people that like Jamaican music. I don't know. I've never heard of it, but I am like an old man in a slightly younger body, so I'm not good with slang. But yeah, it seems to be a word that means relax. So Google says, I'm cotching on the sofa, which means I'm relaxing on the sofa. I've never heard it, but if I hear it again, I will let you know. The next question from this person is the relative pronoun whom still used? That's a great question. Whom, not who. I would say whom is not used very much. I could say, for example, my grandmother is a kind woman whom I admire. Right? So whom is another way of saying who, really. Whom is the object pronoun of who. Who is it? Whom I admire, right? So for me, I almost never use whom. If someone says, I have a present, I might say, ooh, for whom? So like, who is the present for, right? But these days, it's becoming much more common to not use that. So as I said, instead of for whom is it for? I might say, who is it for? And use the subject pronoun instead. It's just easier, and it may not be grammatically correct, but this is, I think, what a lot of people do these days. Even me, as an English teacher, I always forget. I have to think really carefully about where to use whom, and it can also make you sound a bit too formal. Like if you're talking with someone on the street, like just asking for directions, and you use the word whom, it can give the feeling like, oh, I'm better than you. I speak really nice. I speak really good English. I speak proper English, you know? And sometimes it's nice just to talk casually and not, make yourself stand out. So I feel like it's not used very often. It's maybe useful to understand how to use whom, but I wouldn't worry, honestly, about using it too much. I know a lot of English teachers might get mad at me for saying that, but practically, I wouldn't worry about whom. It's not a big thing anymore. In the past, it was very common, though. I have another question from Suraj, who asks, I'm scared of public speaking. How do I overcome this fear? How do I give a farewell speech? What if I forget? This is something that I don't know if I can really be the best person to give an answer, because I am also terrified of public speaking. One tip that I found, I haven't spoken in public many times, but if I speak to a big group of people, one tip that I found was staring at the floor. I don't know if that's a good idea, but the worst thing you can do when doing something in public, like playing the piano, talking on a podcast, or making a speech, is when you become aware of what you're doing. If I start thinking about me sitting here talking into the microphone, I might get really stuck and my mind might go blank. If you're in the moment and you're kind of going with the flow, it's much easier to keep going. And I find that a lot with language learning. If I think about it too hard, I just freeze and my mind goes blank. So what really helped me at the beginning when talking in big groups was just looking at the floor, and I guess that can have the effect that you're really talking from the heart. It's not what good public speakers do, I've noticed, but for me, I was able to talk much more openly when I wasn't looking at people in the eyes. And then once I became more confident and comfortable, I tried to use both of those words at the same time. Once I became more comfortable with that, I could look people in the eyes and it wasn't such a big problem. So that's one thing that I've done, but I still haven't really overcome a fear of speaking. So I'm not able to give you the best advice on that. Gurkan, or maybe Gurkan, asks, as a language learner, What do you think about to be C1 level? How long does it take to reach C1 from B1? I'm afraid I can't really answer this. It depends what language you're learning. I guess you mean English. But it also depends on many, many other factors. I wish I could give you an answer. It depends on your own brain. I think we would be lying if we said that everyone is equal. Some people, they learn languages better than others. It doesn't mean you can't learn, but it just means we're not the same. Not everyone is the same. I don't think I'm a great language learner. It takes me a long time to learn, but it depends. I have been, I guess, around B1 or B2 in Japanese for a long time, and I feel like it's been 6, 7, 8 years. It's been a long time, and I don't think I've really progressed to C1. So everyone's different. My advice is to not worry too much about levels. If I was so focused on getting to C1 in Japanese, I would be so frustrated because it's been so many years. But my attitude is just, I'm having fun. I enjoy Japanese. I'm having fun talking. If I learn a new word, that's enough. I'm excited. I'm happy. I'm not focused on those specific levels. One rule of thumb that I did hear before, which I think gives you some idea, is each level might take double the time of the previous one. So let's say for you, going from A1 to A2, that's beginner level, took 1 year. Then maybe A2 to B1 will take 2 years. B1 to B2, 4 years. B2 to C1, 8 years. That's 8 additional years. That's just a random example. I don't think that's going to be true necessarily, just a random number. But that just gives you an idea. So the main thing to keep in mind that going from, B1 to B2 is not going to be the same as B2 to C1. It's going to be much harder, and it will take longer to level up the more advanced you are. But yeah, I can't give you an answer. But yeah, my real advice is don't worry about it too much. Someone else asks, LLL is their username, and a couple numbers afterwards. Can I speak English without learning grammar, only speaking? Really interesting question. That's something that I have thought about a lot in the past. I would say that it's actually difficult to learn a language without picking up grammar. To answer your question, I think you can speak English without studying grammar. I'm not sure if it will be easier or harder. I think it probably depends on the person. But I don't think it's necessary to sit down and study grammar. Babies don't study grammar, and they can still work out how to speak over 5 or 10 years, right? And I don't think it's necessary. I think it might be helpful, but not necessary. So when we're speaking and listening to English, we naturally will pick up on the grammar over time. It might take a lot longer. You might take a long time to work out what does this mean? Because grammar is an important part of English. It's very important to understand grammar, but it is possible to learn grammar sometimes naturally just through listening and reading, right? It's not always necessary to study grammar. However, my personal approach is a little bit in between, where I do lots of speaking, listening, and reading. And when you find some grammar that you really don't understand, then it's the time to look it up, because that's a sign that you kind of need to learn. However, I don't think it's necessarily a great idea to study grammar from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. I don't think that's a good thing to do for most people. So hope that answers your question. It's kind of a yes and no answer, I suppose. Let's see how many more we can get to. This is from 5 Licks, Lix. If you have to choose one skill to practice any language, what skill would it be? Do you mean like reading, writing, listening, speaking? I'm not exactly sure what the question is, but if that's what you mean, like what language skill, it would be speaking, right? If that's what you meant. As much as I enjoy like reading the signs, but I think speaking is the main part of language, really, isn't it? Like talking to other people and making connections with people. Even if I couldn't, read or listen, I think speaking, well, I guess listening would be hard, but speaking seems to be, you can't really have speaking without listening, can you? I guess if I had to choose between speaking and listening, it's hard actually. Like, that's a good would you rather question, isn't it? Like, would you rather speak but not understand what people say, or not speak but understand everything? That's really tough. It'd be so nice to understand everyone, but on the other hand, I think speaking would be useful for like small interactions, like ordering stuff. But I guess listening would be more useful for you because you can understand everything. I guess I would choose listening. I don't like that would you rather though. It's very hard. I had some questions, quite general ones about British culture and art. It's a good thing to think about for the future, but for this episode, I need some specific questions to answer, right? QX or QX asks how to speak English confidently in real life. I think simply practice makes perfect. If you want to get confident in anything, you need to practice, and you need to do it again and again and again until you get better. Just like podcasting, there's no trick to getting confident podcasting. It's just doing it a lot of times until you get confident. Same with speaking. It's really simple advice, but it's really hard to do. So just speak as much as you can, and that will build confidence over time. Mech asks, is it true that British people are selfish? Oh no. So we had a nice compliment before, now we've got a negative one. So I don't know, honestly. Again, it depends on who you compare to. I think, honestly, everyone is selfish. I think everything we do has some selfishness behind it because we're trying to make ourselves happy. Every action is selfish in some way. It might sound a bit negative, but if you think about it, I think that's true. Even if you donate money to charity, you get a good feeling from that, don't you? I don't think many people would donate money to help people if they felt bad about it. I don't think many people would do that. So I think a lot of people are selfish, or everyone is selfish on some level. I don't know that British people are especially selfish. Selfish is quite a negative word. They only think about themselves. I can't really answer that. I can't really see any difference between British people and other countries on that topic. One question from Sepper Sultani, maybe something like that. They said, do you think this world and life is fair for everyone? I think not. That's what they said. I agree. I mean, I when I was younger, in my more naive, innocent days, I used to think maybe it was fair, or at least the world should be fair. I remember when I was a very young child, we always have this, children have this feeling that things should be fair. If things are not fair, they cry, they get mad. And I remember like very early memories of examples of life not being fair. Maybe my friends were chosen for certain things in school and I wasn't chosen, and there was nothing I could do about it. And it wasn't fair. And I think it's important for children to learn that life isn't fair. It's a really sad reality of life. But yeah, I mean, of course, life isn't fair. There's lots of benefits that some people have that others don't have. And people who are successful will say, oh, I worked really hard. And anyone can be successful. You just have to work hard. But I think that's partly a lie. I think a lot of it is hard work and good luck, right? If you work hard in America, if you're born in New York City, let's say, you're more likely to succeed than if you're born in a rural village in Africa, let's say. I was watching a documentary about Africa yesterday, so that was on my mind. But it's we don't have the same opportunity, and things just aren't fair. I think it's really sad, but that's the case. One thing that's really opened my mind with traveling and also living abroad now is passport privilege as well. Being a British citizen, I am very lucky that I can travel to other countries, most countries, without even needing a visa. And it's not fair because some people with really bad passports, they cannot travel almost anywhere. And there's no reason for that. It's not because I worked harder, it's because I happened to be born in this country. And that is really unfair. If anything is unfair, that is unfair. So, yeah, that's something I've been learning about. And, you know, it's a difficult thing to come to terms with. And I don't know what we can do about it. I guess we can just fight for equality and fairness in the world as much as we can. But I don't know if we will, we'll never have a truly fair world because people are not born the same. I had another question, a grammar question now about don't you be surprised. This is from Kroshka. And they said, what construction is this? I heard it in a song before. Don't you be surprised. Right. So I actually don't know what this is called, if this has a name. But there are two ways we could say don't be surprised or don't you be surprised. The second one, I guess it does two things. First of all, it tells us who we're talking to. Usually it's obvious, don't be surprised, I'm talking to you. But if you want to make it really obvious, add you there. Don't you be surprised. I wouldn't say don't him be surprised or don't her be surprised. That's strange. I think it's only you. But the other thing this does is emphasize. Don't you be surprised. It's emphasizing that I'm talking to you, making it more clear. However, I think it's perhaps less common in speech. It sounds like something that's more common in music. In music, it's really important to have the right number of sounds in a sentence. So this is a nice way to add another sound to fit in with the rhythm of your song. Don't you be surprised, blah, 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 in a song. But it doesn't really have any different meaning from don't be surprised. I guess it can also sound a little bit more playful, like don't be surprised. It's quite blunt, don't do that, don't do that. It sounds quite angry perhaps. Hey, don't you do that. It's more like a playful warning. Don't you do that. I don't know what this is called, if this has a name though. It's not a big grammar rule anyway. Guilia, maybe how you pronounce it, asks, what's your idea about Iran, the country of Iran? I don't have much idea. I know a little bit about the country. I have met many people from Iran. I might have got this question previously, actually. But Iranians seem very nice. They're always friendly. And there have been some problems in recent years, I know, with women's rights and stuff like that, which I hope is improving. I really hope it is, because I would love to visit Iran in the future if I can. That also rhymes. But yeah, I don't really have many negative opinions of most countries in the world. So positive one about Iran as well. I know we've got a lot of Iranian, Iranian, I think Iranian, right? Persian might be the language. Iranian listeners to the podcast. So hello to you. I have a question from ASB who asks, how can intermediate learners improve their skills to understand native speakers? This is a tough one. I think a big struggle that people have is learning only with content that is made for English learners. I think that can be great. I mean, of course, most of my content is that, right? I make content for English learners to help bridge that gap between intermediate and advanced. However, a lot of people say they can understand me, but they can't understand things on TV, for example. So my advice would be to have a combination of materials. Don't give up on my podcast, please keep listening. But also watch TV, watch movies, listen to podcasts that are not intended for English learners, because there's a lot of ways that people talk that are not taught in textbooks or in English learner materials. I do think you have to be careful though, not to get discouraged or demotivated. One student comes to mind that, I don't know if he still listens, but if you do, hello. He is a really great learner. He works very hard on his English, and he learnt a lot of English through video games, where he would watch videos on YouTube as well about video games, and Twitch, I think, as well, the streaming platform. And he would learn a lot of vocabulary through that. And sometimes he would ask me about this vocabulary. And some of it was incredibly kind of like slang. It was like references to things in culture. And it was just things that I think were confusing him and maybe wasting his time to some extent. So I definitely recommend you listen to things you enjoy. You know, watch TV shows you enjoy, watch YouTube videos you enjoy, practice your English with a different range of materials, and maybe you'll pick up on some slang as well. But also keep in mind that a lot of this content is not intended for English learners. Therefore, there will be a lot of stuff here that you can understand, you can learn to understand, but you probably shouldn't learn to copy. You know, my English, you can pretty much copy anything I say and you will sound fine. There's a lot of content out there that, as I said, you know, I watch a lot of gaming content on YouTube, for example. A lot of the stuff they talk about is references to other games and slang words that they made up. It's not even like common slang, it's a slang word that only this group of people know. So this is stuff that I understand and you can learn, but it's not useful for English learning, if that makes sense. With my podcast, if you want to understand 100%, that's fine. With other things, you need to get comfortable not knowing everything that's being said. If you don't understand the whole thing, that's normal. You know, don't try to understand everything. But yeah, basically, in summary, get a lot of practice listening to natural examples of English being used, and you will improve over time. I have, I think, too many questions to get to. I'll try to do a couple more. One is a nice suggestion from Mikhail. Maybe it's like the Italian version of my name. Not sure how you would say that. Mikhail. It looks like. I wonder if you could make another video about puns. I really enjoy those ones. That's great to hear. I love the pun episodes, the joke episodes. I will definitely do one in the future. So thank you for the suggestion. I will do that again at some point. If you know any good puns, let me know. I'm kind of running out of good jokes to tell on those episodes. Anna asks, what's the best method to improve my listening? Should I understand everything or just the general idea? I spoke about listening in, I think it was episode 9. Let's see if my memory is good. Episode 9. Yes, I remember all the way back then, episode 9 in 2019, how to improve your listening skills. I spoke about some methods there. I don't think there's any wrong way to improve your listening. Maybe the wrong way is the way that is boring. You know, don't make it boring. I also think it depends. Like, personally, my own method is if I'm listening to a podcast, I just get the general idea. That is enough for me. If I am sitting down with a video, like maybe it's a 1-minute video, I want to understand 100%. So in that case, I will listen again and again and again. I'll write down the words. I want to get really clear on what is being said. And I think there's benefits to both of them. You know, in real speech, we don't tend to understand 100%. We might miss words. That's totally fine. If you're in more of a study mood, then by all means, sit down and try to study everything. If you just kind of going to work or you're going for a walk, just get the general idea. That's good enough. So I don't think any of them are wrong. It just depends what you want to do. And I think they're both good ways to improve over time. I don't know, honestly, which way will help you improve the most, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. Just do what you can, do what you enjoy, and see which works best for you. Sorry, that's not a very clear answer, but that's my opinion there. One more really quick one now. Did you like Georgia? This is from Nodar, maybe Nodar, and they asked, did I like the country of Georgia? And I have to say, unfortunately, I didn't have a good impression, not because of Georgia, but because I had COVID. I think I mentioned before, I had COVID for 16 days, and I spent my entire trip in my bed, basically. It looked like a great country. The food was nice on my takeaway orders, but I didn't get to experience it much. It seemed quite rough. Like, for example, there was like holes in the road from the construction. That was my first impression, but it seemed like a nice place, very beautiful countryside. And I really, really want to go back in the future. So I plan to go back one day and hopefully not get COVID. I hope I can see your country soon. And one more here, the really quick one on a similar topic from Aless something. Again, I'm only sharing half the name. Have you ever visited Italy? Yes and no. I've never really visited Italy, but I did take the cable car from France. There is something called I forgot what it's called now. But anyway, there's like cable cars you can take from France in the mountains over, and when you get off the cable car, you're in Italy. So I've got a picture of myself on the border of Italy and France, where behind me there's a line and it's Italy here, France here. That's one experience in Italy I had. I couldn't tell I was in Italy, but technically I was in Italy. I also had one time where we drove through a long tunnel under a mountain. We started in France and we came out in Italy. And I think we drove through like one Italian town. Then we turned around and went back to France. So I have technically stood in Italy, but I haven't really done I haven't spoke to anyone. I haven't bought anything. So I don't know if that counts as a visit, but I definitely need to go back and experience it more. I have so many more questions. I will have to do a part 5 one day because there's lots of great questions here. So sorry I couldn't get to them now, but I think this is a good place to end. So thank you for all those who submitted questions. If you want to give me a question, you can also just send me an email. I'll add it to my list for the future. My email is michael@levelupenglish.school. While we are looking at questions, let's also go to Russia now and say thank you to Elmar, who left a review that said, "I'm listening to you every day. You are so inspiring for me. Thank you for your dedication in podcasts." That's amazing. Well, it's such a great compliment to say I'm inspiring. So thank you very much, Elmar. That's very kind of you. I got a few questions today that were just, how can I get better at English and stuff like that. And I'm not sure how to answer those questions. So let me respond to those with a quote now from Vanessa Redgrave. And this quote is, "Ask the right questions if you're going to find the right answers." It's a good tip. Well, thank you so much for your questions and thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know if you did. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, everyone. You have been listening to the Level Up English podcast. If you would like to leave a question to be answered on a future episode, then please go to levelupenglish.school/podcast. That's levelupenglish.school/podcast. And I'll answer your question on a future episode. Thanks for listening.